Right, welcome back to our June Finance Committee for annual plan deliberations. We were at the point where we had, welcome back everyone. We were at the point where we had two remaining resolutions. One, I think, from Councillor Wilson. Sorry, three.
Is that going up to on the screens? I think it's from Michael Decker. Possibly I may have wordsmithed it, but from Michael.
Yeah, thanks very much, Kate, for the work, and Alexa for the work on that. And it's in the email, and it reads: staff advise and time for consideration for consultation in the 23-24 annual plan, the costs and work required to bring forward the business case for Upper Clutha public transport. And I will so move.
Happy to second.
Can I ask, when you say bring forward, are you intending it to be brought forward, the business case, to when?
The 23-24 annual plan process.
Yes, I see that. I'm just thinking, so for consideration for consultation on that draft would mean that, like, this time next year, or I mean, I guess it's during the course of this year, isn't it?
If we choose to do it in the 23-24, we need to know, and this is up to the staff to choose that time frame. So we need to know how much it would cost to do that and the work required. But it may be in January or April next year that they need to tell us that to incorporate it in. Or it'll be March, they have to incorporate it in. It's leaving it to staff to say when that decision has to be made, in order, if we wanted to include it, it would be consulted.
So I think it is appropriate to, I'll get back to you on a minute, Councillor Laws, it is appropriate to ask our financial people whether that staff advice has a cost. That will be a cost during this annual plan time.
I could, well, you said financial people, which is me, but my take is that this resolution is asking for the business case work to be brought forward. Is that right? It's not, you're not asking for whatever outcome comes out of the business case. You're just saying you want the actual business case, analysis to be brought forward. And if that's the case, I mean, that's just something that the PT team would be doing. So I don't know where the business case for Upper Clutha public transport currently sits in the work program or the LTP, but really it's up to Gavin and the transport team whether they can bring it forward from wherever it's already programmed.
Yeah. So can I make another comment? If it's going to cost too much to bring that forward or to bring us a paper, it is the initial, how much will it cost to give us the information that we could include it. It's not that we will definitely go ahead until I know how much it's going to cost and what it looks like. If we did change it, then it is very much the initial part. I think it's what
we need to get back to Councillor Laws in a minute, but could we get an answer from Dr. Palmer about whether this request has a financial implication during this annual plan process? If it's bringing it forward now, the business case, so that it can go into next year's, does that mean you've got money for it or you're able to absorb it during this annual plan or not?
Madam Chair, if this resolution is asking the question, what would a business case cost and how long would it take to deliver it? We can do that without any further resource. We can provide that information for you quite quickly. It's $500,000 for a business case and it would take 18 months kind of answer. That's what you're looking for. We can do that for you very quickly on current resources, because that thinking will have probably been done already. We just need to tweak it a little bit. Obviously, the cost of the business case itself would then need to be put into an annual plan. And I'm reading this to be a decision for a future annual plan discussion.
That's right.
If I've got that correct.
Yes, I think you have.
I think the only caveat would be if working backwards from the next long-term plan, if it's going to extend across a financial year, whether any work on that business case, if you wanted to do a business case, was to start in the 22-23 annual plan year. That's the only thing that's going through my mind. It's going to take longer than 12 months. In other words, you could start a bit sooner. I need to check that. And that would obviously have a resourcing implication for the 22-23 annual plan, which you're considering at the moment. There's also a co-funding issue with Waikatahi anyway. These business cases are co-funded, so we would need to synchronise their processes.
So I presume what we're hearing is that to give advice about what the business case and things would cost is within current resources, but that if we were doing a step after that, it wouldn't be.
That's correct. If you were choosing to advance it, it'll be in there somewhere, but if you want to bring it forward, that's correct. It's not in there.
Councillor Laws, thank you for your patience.
Thank you. I'm just asking a question of the mover. Why is the motion confined to Upper Clutha, which I take to be Wanaka, which has a population of 9,000 people roughly according to the last census, and is a decile 10 area of people with serious wealth, and that's the general community. What about the people of Cromwell, Alexandra and Roxburgh? Are they not clearly going to be included in this public transport survey?
In response to that, Michael, thank you. I saw Upper Clutha as meaning the area generally linking Queenstown and Wanaka. And you wouldn't do that link by bus via the Crown Range, I wouldn't think. It would logically go through Cromwell. So the point of this motion is in response to the many submitters we've had to annual plans over recent years about linking Queenstown and Clutha. Queenstown and Upper Clutha, specifically Wanaka as a terminal point. But I'm seeing the possibility of regular public transport between Queenstown and Wanaka and points in between. I'm not necessarily seeing buses running around Wanaka and Albert Town and Hawea, but linking the whole Upper Clutha area to the Queenstown area.
Again, I need to point out Cromwell is not Upper Clutha. It's Central Otago, and so is Alexandra. So if you run with this motion, Upper Wanaka has a clear delineation with Wanaka and Wanaka Sol.
Okay, I'll take your point.
Well, just look at the rugby clubs. They're all called Upper Clutha.
Sure. What words would you put in there instead of Clutha?
The common terminology is central/lakes to describe the area that I've described.
Central/lakes.
And given the large number of people in straitened circumstances living in Alexandra and Cromwell and points around and in between, to exclude them from a public transport survey does not make a lot of sense to me.
Okay, Kate, what's your thinking about all that?
It was my intention that those areas be included, and I'm really happy with that if that makes more sense to the people on the ground. But it should be limited to the areas that we actually got submissions on, which are those more the Wanaka Cromwell area than, as much as I'd love to see it in Alex, I don't know that we got a submission. Happy either way.
I don't think the loud voice is necessarily the best way to go. So just because people didn't submit doesn't mean to say there isn't a need, as Gary Kelleher, who's resident in that area, will tell you.
Fine.
Have we dealt with your question, councillor Laws?
I guess
No,
if
we haven't
Central
really-
Lakes public transport, and if that's the movers are happy to, that's fine. Thank you.
I am. I'm happy to accept that advice. So we take out Upper Clutha and we replace it with Central Lakes.
Councillor Malcolm.
Thank you, Chair. Are we actually bringing forward a business case, or are we going to develop a business case? Are we saying we're going to move it forward quicker? I just thought the wording should be in there. The work required to develop the business case, because the bring forward, are we going to try and do it quicker or whatever? It's required to develop the business case, and that seems to be what everyone's talking about.
I think, Madam Chair, that Gavin Palmer understood what was meant by this, the way he interpreted it before. But if you want to insert those words, Kevin, there's no harm in that. So you're suggesting to bring forward the development of the business case?
No, I'm
Required
just
to
saying,
develop a business case for.
yeah, and
Required to develop a business case for.
and staff will bring
We've got
forward the
that.
costs and the time frame of that.
Okay.
Okay, you done, councillor Malcolm?
Yeah, but someone's got feedback and it's drowning my ears up here.
Councillor Laws?
Thank you.
Was that yes, you're done?
Yes, that's correct.
Right. Councillor Scott?
Yeah, it's just a question. I'm assuming that any business case process would identify whether particular areas actually stacked up or not. And if it didn't stack up, that they may fall out, as opposed to, at this point, we're just identifying the cost to do the work. But I'm just asking that question. Like, you're not being instructed to establish a public transport system in Alexandria. You're being asked to consider the business case and whether it stacks up and present options and so forth.
That's right.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? Right, we'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
And against? Carried. Right, we're just looking at getting things in an orderly fashion, moving through these last couple.
Okay, wants to withdraw this one.
Yes, excellent.
Yeah, so she wants to withdraw this one. So
So what have we left with?
So now we are left. Put this one and then let's share again.
Not that, we've just done that one. Right, we're now back with you, councillor Scott.
So, Liz, you've got that new wording, Liz?
I've got one also that Councillor Ford's had. Yep, my fixture's up. So is that to the implementation committee, Councillor Scott?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you have a date in mind for that one?
I think it was September.
Okay,
Didn't we say the 14th September?
Yes, that's right.
14th, yes. But I've given you some changed wording though, Liz, yeah?
yep, I've got it. I'm typing it in now.
to the September.
Okay.
Cool, thank you. I just firstly, thank you to Hilary for kicking off the discussion prior to this meeting. Because one of Hilary's concerns was that if we do any work, we need to allow some costs in the next year to actually make some progress. And from some feedback from Dr. Palmer, he said, well, actually, the best way forward is simply focus on an issues discussion paper, and potentially out of that issues discussion paper to be discussed at the implementation committee, we may resolve to get a strategy or not, or forward it on to the annual plan, or whatever that committee and council decide. So there it is. It's currently, we fund the Halo project to a significant amount of money. I think it was 5 years. At some point, that 5 years term will come to an end, and we need to decide, are we going to continue to fund it? I hope we do. But nevertheless, there's other projects that I also hope that potentially we're involved in as well. And the Southern Lake Sanctuary is one that's been identified. They've been tapping us on the shoulder for a period of time. There'll be others. So at the end of the day, what is their strategy? And this is the first step of that, an issues discussion paper, and with no real cost implications, Hilary, at this point. Is that fair, Gavin? No real cost implications to establish an issues discussion paper for the September implementation.
Yes, we can accommodate a discussion paper and current resourcing.
Cool.
Thank you.
So there it is.
Councillor Malcolm.
Happy to second that motion.
Excellent.
Cool.
Could we have the wording on screen, please, Hilary?
It is on our screen. Are you being secluded
It's on
from our
mine.
screen?
It's on mine.
What does councillor Decker have to do so he can see it?
Got it now, thank you.
Councillor Moon.
Just speaking to the motion, I think this is really important and really good timing, because if you look at the amount of funding that has come from the government, and they've committed a huge amount in the biosecurity, biodiversity, probably more biodiversity space, and biosecurity to a certain level as well, but that won't last forever. And I think that for this council as a environmental guardian agency, this is our core business essentially, and if we're able to have an idea of what projects are important to us, and some sort of prioritisation going forward, so we can be on the front foot when those government funds are available. We may not, and probably not, necessarily be the driver in terms of those projects, but we will be perhaps a passive passenger, but an important passive passenger, because, as I say, this is our core business. So I think it's about being on the front foot as opportunities arise, whether it's from central government or from the community or from some other organisation.
Good speakers. I will support this with what the words say. I am concerned, however, if people imagine that when we have it at that meeting, they're going to try and spend money that we haven't got in the budget as a result of having that discussion. If there is no money in the budget, there is no money in the budget, so you wait till next time around. That's a clear advice we have been given, and we do need to start not imagining halfway through the year we will do something. So if it's discussed during September, don't be expecting any money, funding implications until we've discussed it again at another annual plan hearing. Would you like Councillor Malcolm?
I was just going to sum up where I'm at with this, if that's the appropriate time, unless you had other speakers.
No, but I will give Brian a chance to respond after you've spoken.
Look, first, I just want to reinforce what Councillor Calvert has said, that one of the things budgetary-wise that we've been facing with audit and risk and finance is that when we set our budget, we need to stick to our budget. And one of the disciplines that we've had been asked to adhere to is that when we do change decisions or try to change things that are happening, that we actually have to understand the financial ramifications and really look at timetables of when that should be done. Annual plan is the best time to do that. And again, long-term plan is also the other appropriate time to do it. So if we want to make interim changes, we have to look at changing other work plans and really look at those consequences. So this is the right time to do it. And I applaud this motion going forward, because it is going to give us time to discuss things and work out a future strategy going forward and get an understanding of it. So, support Councillor Scott's motion.
Councillor Scott, right of reply.
I agree with 100% with everything Kevin said. Thank you.
Right, I'll put this motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried.
Did have one that Councillor Ford submitted, but since she's not here, someone else would have to move it. If they're interested.
We can't just see the whole thing, Liz. Little stuff.
It's this one right here.
I thought the word group wasn't needed to be in there. That was,
It is.
oh, I do.
Would you like to move that,
Very happy
Councillor
with
Scott?
that. Very happy. As I understand it, VEX is simply just trying to assist the communication and actions process so that we've got all this information, that it's able to be communicated in an efficient way to the various staff groups. Thank you. Happy to move.
Seconded by Councillor Noon. Any discussion? All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Against? Carried. So we've now
That
got,
comes down to Councillor Wallace's motion.
right. We've now got two motions in the order that they've arrived to us, which we haven't made any proposals to put any further funding into the annual plan, nor any resolutions to take anything out of the annual plan in particular. So that leaves us with this decision.
Can we have on the screen at once, as I think they're both they're alternatives to each other, or not, please?
The second one is the as confirmed as proposed. There they go. There they go. So would somebody like to second this motion?
I'll second Councillor Laws's motion.
Councillor Hope. Councillor Laws, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, you'll be aware, obviously, of the significant cost of living crisis that we are experiencing at the moment. Probably the worst since the early 1990s, when the economy was in recession and people were losing their jobs and people were struggling to put sufficient food on the table and work out which of the bills they were going to pay. That situation is almost upon us, and for some businesses and individuals and households, it already is. And the cost of living crisis, according to all of the independent economic commentators, is likely to worsen, increasing interest rates, increasing inflation, increasing prices for our groceries and essential food items, and a general feeling that the government's attempt to massage some of that does not extend beyond the temporary payments, which will go to everybody for 3 months, and the current attempt to take 25 cents of the excise tax off petrol is unlikely to be extended. The impact of all that over the next 12 months is considerable, and it is particularly felt amongst my constituents who are struggling at the moment. Can I also say, for those who think that the rural sector is doing really well, they are facing incredible difficulties at the moment in terms of their cost structures. And although, for example, the dairy prices might be at record levels, the reality is that their cost structure is also at record levels. Life is going to be very tough. Now, we've got two options. We can go ahead with our 18% rate rise, as we proposed in February, and not recognise that there are any people in difficulty, or we can in actual fact contribute in the way in which any normal leaded organisation would do so. The government have indicated already in their budget that they are prepared to come up with short-term solutions to try and massage and ride the economy and our communities through this most difficult time. I find it odd, therefore, that while the government can decide that it's going to do that, the Otago Regional Council would decide to carry on with business as usual. It is most expressly not business as usual. 9%, I've looked at our budget as what we could afford. I've asked those questions deliberately around staffing numbers. There are a number of unfilled vacancies at the moment. I'm not proposing that they not be filled, but I am suggesting that we can defer a number of those appointments over the next 12 months without compromising our work. We are merely deferring and delaying until times are better, to be honest with you. We're not sacrificing the environment to this, not at all. What we are doing is simply realising the reality of a time that is quite unique over the last 20 or 30 years and responding appropriately. And that is why the motion is before you. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I have a lot of sympathy for what Michael's talked about. However, I can't support it, given that the environment also needs to be, it isn't in the best of ways and needs to be invested in. And we need to know what is happening in there. And a lot of this is our costs will give us a better picture of that. The costs that should have been spent years ago in this council weren't, and that's not his fault nor mine, but it's we need to do it and we can't put it off any longer. I think that if we went down the track of, as he suggested, as much sympathy as we've got and as much submissions we got supporting that, we would have to consult on what it was that we cut. I am, so therefore, albeit sympathetic, I'm more than happy to foreshadow, because I think Alexa is absent, or maybe she's back.
She's back.
I'm back.
Oh, thank you. Support for her motion with some minor tweaks to the end about savings. But I can't support it because I think it's not fair for where we're at the moment, or for staff, or for what the community commitment to us doing better is.
Totally agree with you.
Was that your contribution, Councillor Deacon?
Yeah, it was more of an intervention, I suppose, than a contribution. But I much prefer that approach. I agree with her entirely, and so do the majority of our submitters, which is what we're here to talk about.
Councillor Malcolm.
Mine's a question. I think, am I allowed questions?
Certainly, Anne.
Right. Question two, and I'd like an answer from both the mover and the seconder. Could you tell me with your proposition? Look, I've looked over these figures and the plans that are associated with this annual plan for the last many months, and come to the what I thought was the conclusion where I was heading. But now at this we have a motion moved and seconded that is quite dramatic to the organisation. And so I wonder, to help me find some way of supporting your motion, could you please tell me a list of the services that you propose we will cut and what impact they will have on our organisation's work plans, and also how we are going to get through the consultative process that we would probably need within the timeframes that we're mandated to deliver our annual plan.
Do you want me to answer that?
I'd like both both the mover and seconder. I'd like an answer on. Thank you. Yep, certainly.
Councillor,
I think, first of all, your premise for answering the question is wrong. Your premise for answering the question is, well, what services would you cut? And I'm looking already at a number of staff who are employed in the communication sector of the Otago Regional Council. I think it's 14. It's an absurd number. It is it's a bizarre number when you think.
excuse me, point of order.
I think we need to be really, really careful when we start talking about staff numbers and departments. And I suggest if we are going to have an in-depth conversation around those topics, we need to.
Oh, that's not a point of order.
My ruling on that point of order would be to don't become any more granular than you are, Councillor Laws.
Well, I think that's absurd ruling. You either want to look, I was asked a question, and the question is premised wrong. The question is premised on what services would you cut? And I am answering by saying that the most effective way of bringing rates into line and actually realising the cost of living crisis in our area and responding to our community is to ensure that we don't increase the number of staff over the next 12 months. We already have vacancies. I'm not proposing that we don't fill those vacancies, but the question is the number of staff that are there. Our former chief executive, in actual fact, made a point of how difficult it is in the current economic environment to recruit staff. Well, how ironic that at this time we're proposing to go ahead and still have, I think, about an extra 30 or 35 staff employed over the next 12 months, at a time we're finding it difficult even to fill the vacancies in the organisation. It's those costs, those staff costs, that directly lead to the 18% rates increase. I've used communications as an example. This organisation does not do a very good job of, in actual fact, looking at what we do and asking, is that the best way to do it? We'd never examine internally ourselves. But I looked at communications as a really good example of what I would consider to be serious overstaffing for the communication that we make. But I'm pretty sure I could go through other aspects of the organisation as well. This is a temporary measure. We'll re-examine this in 12 months, is my answer to Councillor Malcolm. And we will then see. But we're on track to complete everything that we need to do. The long-term plan is set over 3 years. We decided last year we wanted to front-end load it all. All this seeks to do is, in actual fact, put it over those 3 years. And then in 12 months' time, we will review the situation.
Councillor Hope, would you like to answer
I
Councillor
don't.
Becker's question?
Thank you, Councillor Malcolm. I don't have much more to add because, as I say, we could say a particular department, but they might just choose to shave it. Where I'm coming from, and that's why I don't want to get into that discussion. I can see Mr. Saunders nodding his head, and I don't blame him. But what I'm coming from is I'm looking at the outside picture. It's the people that can't afford it. Thank you.
Councillor Malcolm, followed by Councillor Robertson. And then Councillor Scott.
I'll just come back because my question really hasn't been answered, but I'll come back when I make my submission to this. My comment.
Councillor Robertson, Councillor Scott, Councillor Moon.
Thank you. Yeah, I think Councillor Deaker summarised what I want to say fairly succinctly. I believe that Councillor Laws's motion there, which isn't up at the moment, but it has a component that has a rider on his 9% reduction in that the work, okay, right. It's up now, thank you, I'm just reading that. Unless deemed essential to the performance of ORC's statutory or national policy obligations. So when we set this work program, we carefully went through every single work stream and had a really close look at what we do deem to be essential to the performance of ORC. And that is where we've got to with the 18%. Totally agree with Councillor Wilson that now is not the time to be going backwards in terms of environmental, our responsibilities for the environment. So yeah, that it's really important that we continue on with these work streams. We have received a whole lot of submissions from people saying they believe in the ORC and our work programs. They want us to share more widely what we are doing because it's a good news story, involve the community because they understand what we're doing. We're currently seeing a whole lot of comms on ORC governance, and we're not focusing on the work that's actually happening and the value for money that community is getting from ORC. To ensure that we can complete those work programs, we need an 18% rates rise, unfortunately. Councillor Laws went on to talk about some businesses who have record profits at the moment but are struggling because of their cost structures. Unfortunately, as we we've got a lot to consider for the environment. Some systems are going to need to be redesigned into the future, and we're going to need to work with communities really closely as we think about the really important decisions we need to make. We need the science, we need the engagement, we need all of those strands of work that we're doing, and we even, unfortunately, Council Laws, need those comms really, really crucially, so that we can ensure that we're taking our communities with us. We've heard a lot of people saying that we're not currently doing that well. Well, we've looked at that as a council and that we've acted accordingly. So, yeah, I'm supporting the 18%, and I can't see where the shaving or where the specific savings could be made, apart from what you said about some comms. And to me, that's important. So thanks.
Councillor Scott.
Yeah, Cole, we went through an LTP process where we identified that there was a lot of work that we needed to do regarding the environment and so forth, and the community agreed and basically said, let's get on with it. And here we are now proposing work that is consistent with that, an 18% increase. This council resolved to go out to the community and ask them again, what did they think? Could they afford it? And they provided various feedback. We gave them two key questions. How do you think the council should react to global issues in relation to our 22-23 work program? There were 80 responses, 71% answered no change, stick with long-term perspective and build capacity in agreed areas. Question 2, do you think council should stick to the LTP to increase the scale of work over years 1 to 3? There were 72 responses, 60% responded yes and asked us to get on with it. It's time for us to get on with it, and with that comes responsibility. We need to deliver on lots of different areas and we need to get on with it.
Well said, Brian.
I won't be supporting Councillor Laws's motion.
Councillor Noo,
Thanks, Madam Chair.
followed by Councillor Forbes.
I just want to take people back, and it's a good segue that Brian, Councillor Scott has given, but just talking about the LTP process, and I can recall
one of the first steps that we made was a workshop at the Finance Committee meeting in Cromwell, December 2020, I think it was the 9th of December. And that's when we first talked about the significant step up that was required, or formally talked about it at a committee meeting. The significant step up that was required to ensure that we were able to deliver on, as Councillor Robinson just alluded to, our statutory obligations, our community's expectations, and as a council, we wanted to deliver to a higher level than we had in the past, particularly in the environmental space. So from that, we went out to the community, and these summary LTP documents were delivered throughout Otago. We had obviously a hell of a lot of feedback. We settled on a significant rate increase for the 21-22 year, the 48% increase, average rate increase for year one, i.e. last year, the 18 that we're talking about now, and then the 12% for the following year, the 23, 24, the third year in the LTP. So we made some pretty significant commitments, and I take Councillor Laws's point. We need to recognise that things have changed, and from time to time we've actually acknowledged the pressure our ratepayers have been under, and I'll just reflect on the 2021 annual plan where we decided that the ratepayers wouldn't have a general rate increase, so it was a zero general rate increase. There was still a small increase in targeted rates, 2.something% off the top of my head. So we have over the years recognised from time to time where the ratepayers need to have a break, etc. And I think that in the current situation, there is good reason to take that into consideration. However, I think our commitment, our ambitious plan going forward, lifting work programs, ensuring that we are fit for purpose, and as I say, meeting the central government's direction, meeting our community's direction, and meeting our own personal direction, I think is still important that we stay on track. I need to acknowledge that most of the urban households across the region, the increase varies between $30 and $70, but I also need to acknowledge that the larger value properties or higher value properties such as farms, commercial buildings, etc., it's in the hundreds and sometimes in the $1,000 increase or thousands of dollars increase, particularly if they are receiving targeted rates such as land and flood and drainage, PT, etc. So all in all, I think we need to be bold, stay on track. There is a lot of programs that have been started, and we've committed to providing staff resource and funding partway through, or only just in their early gestation period. And I don't think now's the time to pull back. I think we need to stay on track and deliver what was a pretty thorough LTP process, and this process really just reconfirms that we stay on track. Thank you.
Councillor Forbes.
Thank you. Really, kautoko Andrew's words and the others before me and Gretchen, but I'll say them anyway in case it's important. We received when we went out for consultation lots of encouragement or criticism for a lack towards more climate change response and to crack on in what we are doing. In the consultation of the 21 to 24 long-term plan, a clear message was received to get on with it. Get on with doing things better and doing more. We acted on that message with a series of rates rises which would deliver increased levels of service that the feedback from the community had told us. Councillor Laws with his motion would have us delay or defer staff appointments unless they're essential to performing statutory or national policy obligations. The issue with this is that our community has told us they want us to do more than just those obligations. And much of that more things like the Otago Lake strategy. Those things aren't a statutory or national policy obligation, but our communities have agreed to us doing those things, and it's clear that they want us to continue with that. So what we did this year was we decided to retest the community's commitment to that sort of thing in the light of changed circumstances, including the cost of living crisis. And we have heard again that people want an increased response to these issues: climate change, water quality and quantity, air quality, public transport. And they also want us to do things like lake strategy, improving transport, integrated catchments, etc. Several submissions from both individuals and groups have told us to get on with it. So I want us to do just that. There is much work to be done before our communities will see us getting on with it. The business cases, planning processes, consultation. So let's not slow ourselves down by not funding such processes and not putting the staff in place that can help us do that. So for that reason, I ask us all to vote for the 18% rate rise.
Councillor Kelleher.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I will support Councillor Laws and Councillor Hope's motion, purely for the reason that I'm sympathetic to the 18% increase, and we are very advanced on that. But these are incredibly challenging times, and we only ever hear from the most devoted in one direction or the other when it comes to our submission process. And that is a very, very small, generally minority of the community, the most vocal and the keenest to speak with us. And then we as councillors have to do what's right for this business, bearing in mind that we must do what central government and our statutory responsibilities require of us. But these are incredibly challenging times, and Councillor Laws is right in that there is real hardship out there. And so when we make these decisions, we are making them on behalf of everybody, and things are constantly changing for what is financially able to be met for these people, but they have to accept this on the basis of what we decide. So I'm really interested in the debate around, or the emotive discussion around, if you accept 9 versus 18, it's as if the environment work doesn't advance at all. The difference really is around some more prudence being sought across the organisation. And for all the discussion we've had around the 18 from the onset, we are still at 18. And has the prudence really been found? I mean, we're talking substantial increase at 9, and I think it could be found if left to be found. So yeah, I won't say any more. I'll support the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Hope, you didn't speak before you answered the question. Would you like to speak?
I do appreciate it. Thank you very much, Chair Calvert. I can't support an 80% rate rise. I look out there. I looked the other day when I came back from Lawrence from the Federated Farmers meeting and the AWACA meeting, the number of shops that are empty in Valcluth, the number of shops empty here, people. And that's only in the urban areas. The rural people are feeling it hard. We've got government rain down on you, fuel has gone up, food costs have gone up, rates have gone up, bank interest rates are going, and they're still rising too. And COVID is still here disrupting us. Yes, we can do some work, but what we're saying is, let's just trim it. And I cannot support 18% rate rise. I have weighed up all the options to change the increase at the time of the activities versus changes from the economy here in Otago and our country. And let's not forget what's all going around the world. This, after all, is the Otago's ratepayers' money we're spending. Thank you.
If there are no further speakers, we'll come back to Councillor Laws for his right of reply.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sometimes I'm convinced the Otago Regional Council lives in an alternate reality. And this is a pretty good example today. The 18% rate rise was set at a time even before COVID had started to impact upon our community. And we first of all in year 1 imposed a 48% rate increase, the largest in the history of local government. That was last year. This year it's 18%. The world's changed with COVID's impact the invasion of the Ukraine, inflationary pressures, and electric price robbery of central Otago by a Dunedin-based organisation, petrol and diesel going up, interest rates going up, the cost of living become a serious factor for almost every middle and lower income family in Otago. And what's the Otago Regional Council's response? Let's not recognise any of that. We'll just plough on regardless. This consultation process, which is cited as a reason why we should carry on, I called it a joke when I started, and boy, was it. 99 replies out of 220,000 people. And you sit there and think that that's representative of the community. Like I said, alternate reality. And then there was the no internal examination of what we're doing or anyhow at the moment. We're not good enough to even see that the dollars we're spending are appropriately spent and that we're getting value for money. I've just cited 14 communication staff as an example, but there would be others in the organisation. What this motion, all it sought to do, all it seeks to do, is to defer for 12 months the employment of new staff unless those new staff are required for statutory or national policy obligation. It seeks to, in actual fact, show some form of sensitivity to our community. It seeks to re-engage with our community and say, we understand, we're actually carrying on with our environmental work, we've got a lot to do, and we are actually going to defer new work until year 3. Then we're going to examine it. By that time, we will be better informed as to whether or not the cost of living crisis is still a crisis. It may well be. That is why I enjoin this particular remit to you all. Thank you.
I think we have division.
Councillor Duker,
No.
Councillor Forbes,
No.
Councillor Hope,
Yes.
Councillor Kelleher,
Yes.
Councillor Laws,
Yes.
Councillor Malcolm,
No.
Councillor Noon,
No.
Councillor Robertson,
No.
Councillor Scott,
No,
Councillor Wilson, Councillor Wilson,
No, sorry, had it on mute.
Chair Calvert.
Yes.
Motion fails 7-4.
Councillor Forbes, before we ask for a second, are you happy for the second?
I'll second
With
that, Madam Chair.
that motion to be in there?
Yes, I'm happy for that. Thank you. You're welcome.
Right. Would Councillor Forbes like to speak to her motion?
I think I've said everything I needed to say in the last motion. I just wouldn't mind hearing from Councillor Kate about a amendment she might have thought.
Are you looking for an amendment, Councillor Wilson?
It might help.
It was about the first one. It's resolves that the annual plan be confirmed at the 18% rise for the 2022-23 as proposed. And then it was going to be comma, but with any savings, and we can encourage the staff as much as we like to, but with any savings being reported quarterly to council. And so that's, and the reason for that is there are, I think we know that there can be savings or things will prop up that will give a saving. These things are always done on estimates. And if there are savings, we should be putting, be very aware of those savings and putting them to either into the bank or balancing the budget or having a better idea. They shouldn't just be available for staff to change into different pots. And I'm not saying that they do that, but I think we need to encourage somehow that any savings be absolutely accountable to us for and saved if can be.
I'm okay with that. Are you okay with that,
Cool.
Councillor Scott?
Yep.
I think it solves something else we were talking about earlier too.
Right, would you like, you've spoken to
I
your,
don't, I think it's clear. I want to see us charging ahead on our environmental mandates, and while I acknowledge that there's not that many people who have responded, I think that they, in our annual plan consultation, I think their responses have been considered and represent a reasonably wide range of people. So yeah, there we go. I don't need to say anything more.
Councillor Moon.
Just a very brief comment, but just on reflection of the previous discussion. The LTP has inflation factored in based on what inflation was 12 months ago. So there's probably about a 4% difference between what it was 12 months ago and what it is now. So our 18% 12 months ago, that, you know,
22% now.
Let me finish. The fact of the matter is it's already under pressure, and there will need to be the fact of the matter is the 18% won't get you as much as what it did 12 months ago, simply because of the inflation rate currently.
Councillor Wilson, followed by Councillor Laws.
Thank you, Chair. I am happy to support this because I do believe and agree in some ways with many of the things that were discussed in the previous unsuccessful motion. I think we need to encourage in every which way that staff look for every savings and be really accountable to the community for those savings, and to congratulate the staff if they make them. My one concern as we go forward, and my one regret, is that I don't know that we use the community as well as we could. And I'm thinking of people like Don Robinson, who's offered his wealth of expertise to us, and as he did last week when he submitted. There are many people out there that could make our job and the council staff's job easier if we engaged better, and there would be savings to be made. That is the direction and why I've added that extra, and thank you very much for Alexa and Brian for accepting that in there. That's one part of the savings. I think the world changes in different ways, technology changes, we can be smarter, we can be cleverer, and we should always be looking for savings. I can just encourage the staff to try and do that without focusing on any one department or any one job. I have some faith that they will be able to report some of those to us, and we'll be able to smooth some of these curves eventually. Thank you.
Councillor Laws.
Well,
Councillor Scott.
obviously, I won't be supporting this motion for a good number of the reasons beforehand. But this motion is, of course, dependent upon employing 30 to 35 additional staff BORC over the next financial year. And I have to say that I do need to re-emphasise again how difficult that is going to be, given the fact that throughout local government and even throughout central government, the recruitment of staff has been so difficult. And I've noticed some of the touching and almost naive comments of my colleagues when it comes to saying that that work will be done, that we're going to plough on regardless, and we're going to get that environmental stuff done, when we are going to have significant difficulties recruiting staff anyhow. I also find it odd that we should be pathetically grateful, according to Andrew, for the 18% rate rise because, gee, there's inflation, you know. Yes, they'll be doing cartwheels in the streets of Alexandra and Dunedin on that one. We don't review, and I want to say this again, how we actually spend money. We're shocking at it. It's the one thing we don't do. Every year we have this discussion, but we never have the proper discussion about, is the money that we're spending actually spent appropriately? And if you asked any of us sitting around the table at the moment, if we have any idea of the detail of how that money is spent, we would all have a blank look. For that reason, I won't be supporting the motion. I do think, though, Madam Chair, that you probably need to separate those two motions as well, just quietly, as we come to the vote.
Thank you for your advice, Councillor Laws. Councillor Scott.
Cool. I will be supporting the motion. I am seconding the motion. I won't repeat what I said before in relation to Councillor Laws. It's applicable to this particular motion. I do take on board, though, that final point that Councillor Laws said. We do actually have a responsibility to really analyse the efficiencies of our processes. I know, for example, in the committee that I co-chair with Carmen, the implementation committee, where we're going through this tremendous exciting growth. We've got something like, I think, 24 staff in the field of environmental implementation. That's internally. And externally, we've got catchment groups and all this type of thing. And we need to ensure that everything integrates together, works together. And I agree that over the next period of time, we should be analysing things like that, analysing our efficiencies, getting a bit of a feedback loop going so that we're always striving to do better and ensuring that we're actually getting the outcomes that we need to get. So this is not the end of the process. This is the start of the process. We've opened the door to a budget, but with it comes responsibilities and outcomes. And as others have said, we need to be part of that process. So thank you.
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you. First of all, in terms of what Councillor Laws said, I think I need to comment that we do keep a track of how we spend money and understand it. So we do understand that. We have quarterly reports on how we're tracking and also financial reporting, and we're also audited. So we do understand how we spend money on behalf of ratepayers. So that's an important point. And the other is, I suppose, in terms of what was raised about efficiencies, yes, we do need to make sure that we are doing that. I have no doubt that we are working efficiently. All of our directorates have regular meetings and ensure that that is the case. But yes, we have opportunities when we see those quarterly reports and financial reports to ask questions, and we should. So let's keep doing that. Let's also keep thinking about unplanned expenditure as we go into this annual plan. Each time we ask for more work to be done, it potentially delays very efficient work programs that are in place or require external costs, consultants, investigators, whatever. All of that costs extra money. So we're going to need to be really mindful of all of those types of things as well, because costs could be above the 18% otherwise. Thank you.
Councillor Malcolm.
Yeah, look, firstly, apologies, I can't be in the chamber. I am being isolated, and probably some people think I should be isolated for quite a while, but apologies, I can't be there. Look, this is really tough. It is, I agree with the sentiments of the last motion. I've done a lot of work within communicating within my community, where we have got the full realm of pressures from the current global crisis and everything that's happening. But I just think what we need to do at the moment is really actually start letting people know what we are actually doing, be very clear about our work programs, what we're actually doing, what we're about to do, and what difference those programs are actually making or trying to achieve to make. So I think we've got to get out there and make sure that people understand us and we understand what those programs are. The message I'm clearly getting from all the people that I'm talking to, and I believe I am talking to plenty, is 18% is terrible. 18%, we understand that you need it. But get your spending right. Get us value for money. Don't duplicate services. Understand what the community wants and work with them. But everyone that I talk to regularly repeats the need for more to be done for the environment. So it's a tough figure. We need to do it. We need to keep this momentum going. The benefits that we will have long term will start to show out, but we can't halt that process that we're doing now. But let's, as a team, as governance and staff, we all need to seek the very best bang for buck over this period. Talking with the directors yesterday, I'm very confident that that is front of their mind, and we will keep jogging them in that direction. I'm very confident that they've got their finger on the pulse of our spending, where it needs to be spent, and the pressures that are coming. And I've implored them that they come to us early and seek guidance, seek support when required at an early stage. So I'm sure that's going to happen. 18% is tough, but sometimes you just need to be tough to get things going and to keep things going. So I'm supporting the motion, and thank all the councillors that are supporting this motion. It's another bold move by us, but we've made that choice on our long-term plan. We need to do it for the environment. We need to do it for our people. We're doing it. Thank you.
I will support this motion, or these pair of motions. But I particularly want to focus on the second part. What concerns me is, and I thank Councillor Robertson for reminding us that we get financial reports quarterly and we have auditors auditing. We were told by our auditors recently that despite the fact that we keep making budgets, we keep not meeting them. And if we do that regularly, that there can be one-off sort of reasons why that might happen. But if we do that regularly, then we're not budgeting properly. And whether they're unbudgeted items caused around this table or come from the staff or wherever they come from, we need to get our budgets right. And we got the message that if we can't balance our books, we will be heading down the track of getting a bad mark from our auditors on our reports. We should not be not balancing our budgets. And what that means to me for this year is there is an increased inflationary pressure, and it won't be even across the board. And there are other pressures that will be coming, and there'll be wages and other things, and although 3% is being factored in, there'll be other things too. Because of that, what I'm signalling into would be to say, we know that those things are going to happen. So we do not expect staff to come back, having spent this budget on the way through the year, to suddenly say, I've got to order some steel and it's 900% increase, or I've got to do some more things. That will happen. So the signal that should give to our staff is that they better be under spending during the year, because there will be some unexpected spending that comes, and we haven't got the budget for it. We don't expect to just say, oops, the budget's been exceeded yet again, what a surprise. So because we don't want to be surprised about that, the only way of our staff achieving that will be to underspend on the way through, to allow for the unexpected things that we're not going to be underspending. And what I would see us doing is knowing that that's true in a holistic sense, and it's true in a department by department sense. One of the things we do, for example, is we haven't up till now, and we do need to, budgeted appeals on the basis that we can't predict them. Well, we can predict that we spend $2 million on them each year, and we need to stop doing that because we just overspend our budget, and that's stealing money from our children overspending our budget because we're not being straightforward with ratepayers because we say this is what we're going to do, and then we do the stealing money from our children routine at the end of the year because we borrow that money from next year's people, which is our children effectively. So in each department, I would expect on the way through the year to see that there's underspends happening because there will need to be room for more spending. And in fact, as an organisation, since it might be that we have like planning appeals and things, that we carefully think about those, and that any of those things, we know that that might be something that can't be increased spending of which can't be totally absorbed in the planning area. So some of the rest of the general managers, their whole organisation in general, will need to have an underspend to get that back to a balanced budget. So that is the challenge, which is why, although I think 18% is too much, I think that if we do what we would have been doing if we increased it by 9 or 10%, we will still be getting to 18%, but we'll be doing that in a properly balanced budget fashion. And that's what we need to do. And it's time we started doing it. By June next year, we will absolutely have to be doing it in the future. Our auditors have made that clear to us.
Cool.
Councillor Forbes, your right of reply.
I think it's all been said. I want to put the motion and I hope you will support it.
Okay, we'll put this in two parts. Part one. Will we do this by
Yes, division.
division? Right.
Councillor Jeker,
Yes.
Councillor Forbes, Councillor Hope,
No.
Councillor Kelleher,
No.
Councillor Laws,
No.
Councillor Malcolm,
Yes.
Councillor Noon,
Yes.
Councillor Robertson,
Yes.
Councillor Scott,
Yes.
Councillor Wilson,
Yes.
Chair Calvert.
Yes.
Motion carries H3.
And the second part of the motion.
Second part of the motion. Councillor Jeker,
Yes.
Councillor Forbes,
Yes.
Councillor Hope,
Yes.
Councillor Kelleher,
Yes.
Councillor Laws,
Yes.
Councillor Malcolm,
Yes.
Councillor Noon,
Yes.
Councillor Robertson,
Yes.
Councillor Scott,
Yes.
Councillor Wilson,
Yes.
and Chair Calvert.
Yes.
Motion carries 11-0.
Right, now we have the motions that were presented to us in our paper, which are the sort of, I wanted to say procedural motions, but that's not quite, administrative motions.
Happy to second or move.
Moved by councillor Hope, seconded by councillor Wilson. All those in favour?
Well, Madam Chair, can I speak to the motion?
Thank you, pardon. Yes, of course you can. My apologies. Councillor Laws.
It's an actual fact to motion one. Notes the public feedback on the ORC's draft annual plan. I just want to repeat and reiterate how poor our consultation process was and is. The fact that we got 99 submissions, we should hang our heads in shame. We clearly didn't engage with the communities, and we clearly didn't talk to people who are going to be affected by our policies. I made this point, and so did a number of other councillors, I think in May, or was it April, just before we put our consultation document out. But really, if we think that this is consultation, we're fooling ourselves. We're living in not only a delusional world, but we're also denying the democratic process, because we simply aren't engaging sufficiently with our communities to get the kind of feedback that we need. If you compare Otago Regional Council's submissions response to other district authorities, TAs and regional councils around New Zealand, you'll find it's very, very, very poor indeed. So you can note it all you like, but I note it with a degree of shame, not with a degree of pleasure.
Gino.
I just want to just emphasise the point, this is a non-LTP year. And in terms of consultation, I think we had for the LTP 21-31, we had hundreds of submissions, I think 600 or 700, and I think about 100 of those submitters came and spoke to us either electronically or in person. So that sets the framework to a certain degree for this year's process. So even though I accept Councillor Laws's points around the number of submitters, etc., but I think as was noted in the staff summary for this process, that a lot of submitters said, just get on with the job with what you committed to. So I think a lot of the community that we didn't hear from thought along the same lines. Thank you.
Any other speakers? Then I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
All those against?
No,
Would you like that noted?
that's all right. It's not passed unanimously.
Motion carried. That is the conclusion of our meeting today. Thank you, those who might be listening online. Thank you again to the submitters who engaged with us, and thank you to the councillors and our staff, more importantly, who've been bringing the information to us that allowed us to follow this process today. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam
Thank you very much for sharing that.